Your cells are aging faster than they should be right now, not because of the years on your calendar, not because of genetics you inherited from your parents, but because of what you ate yesterday and what you'll likely eat again today. Every time you put food in your mouth, you're either accelerating or decelerating the biological aging process at the cellular level. And for most people over 50, the foods they believe are harmless or even healthy are systematically destroying the mechanisms that keep cells young, functional, and resilient. This isn't about wrinkles or grey hair. This is about mitochondrial dysfunction, telomere shortening, chronic inflammation, and oxidative stress. These are the biological markers of aging that determine whether you live independently into your 80s or whether you spend your final decades managing chronic disease and disability. And 7 specific foods that are likely sitting in your kitchen right now, are driving this accelerated aging process in ways that most people never connect to their declining health. The devastating part is that these aren't foods marketed as junk. These are foods that appear in dietary guidelines that show up in hospital cafeterias that well-meaning family members bring to Sunday dinner. But the research is clear. These foods damage your DNA, impair your body's ability to repair itself, and shorten your lifespan. And if you're eating them regularly, you're aging yourself faster than necessary. Hi, I'm Dr. Alex. I'm an emergency medicine doctor, and after nearly 10 years in the emergency department, I've seen the long-term consequences of accelerated biological aging. I've treated patients in their 60s who look and function like they're 80 because their bodies have been breaking down faster than they should. I've also seen patients in their 70s who are vibrant, independent, and healthier than people 20 years younger because they've protected themselves from the dietary factors that drive premature aging. My goal now is to help people understand which foods are aging them and to prevent the chronic diseases I see every single day. And I want to take just a few seconds here to make you a promise. I promise to keep creating the most helpful videos I possibly can, grounded in the latest research and science to help you live longer and healthier lives. And all I ask in return is that you give this fairly new channel a chance and hit the subscribe button. If you get to the end of this video and you didn't think it was worth your time, or you've not learned something new, then feel free to unsubscribe. No hard feelings. But if you give me your time and your attention, I'll give you everything I've learned from over a decade in medicine. So please help me out. Hit the subscribe button to help this channel reach more people like you. And let's continue with the video. Before we talk about the 7 specific foods that accelerate aging, we need to understand what biological aging actually is and how it differs from chronological aging. Chronological aging is simple. It's the number of years you've been alive. Biological aging is how old your cells and tissues actually are based on their function and structure. You can be 65 chronologically, but have the biological age of a 50-year-old if your cells are healthy and resilient. Or you can be 55 chronologically and have the biological age of a 70-year-old if your cells are damaged and dysfunctional. The difference comes down to 4 primary mechanisms. The first is telomere length. Telomeres are protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes that shorten every time a cell divides. When telomeres become too short, cells can no longer divide properly and either die or become senescent, which means they stop functioning and start secreting inflammatory compounds. The second mechanism is mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of your cells, producing the energy needed for every biological process. When mitochondria become damaged or dysfunctional, energy production drops, cellular repair slows, and waste products accumulate. The third mechanism is oxidative stress. This occurs when free radicals, which are unstable molecules produced during normal metabolism, overwhelm your body's antioxidant defenses and start damaging DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. The fourth mechanism is chronic inflammation. Low-grade inflammation that persists over years damages tissues, impairs immune function, and accelerates every age-related disease, from heart disease to Alzheimer's. Now, diet influences all 4 of these mechanisms. Certain foods protect telomeres, support mitochondrial function, reduce oxidative stress, and suppress inflammation. Other foods do the opposite. They shorten telomeres, damage mitochondria, increase oxidative stress, and promote chronic inflammation. And when you eat those aging foods regularly, year after year, the cumulative damage becomes visible in your health outcomes. You develop metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and functional impairment earlier than you would have otherwise. This isn't theoretical. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed over 5,000 adults for 10 years and measured biological aging markers, including telomere length, inflammatory markers, and oxidative stress. Participants who consumed high amounts of the foods we're about to discuss had significantly shorter telomeres, higher inflammation, and greater oxidative damage compared to those who avoided these foods. The difference in biological age between the two groups was an average of 8 to 12 years, despite identical chronological ages. That means dietary choices alone were responsible for a decade of biological aging. And what makes this particularly striking is that these weren't people with drastically different lifestyles. They had similar exercise levels, similar smoking rates, similar stress levels. The primary variable that separated those who age slowly from those who age rapidly was food. The first food that accelerates aging is refined vegetable oils, and this includes soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, and canola oil. These oils are in nearly every processed food you buy. They're used in restaurant cooking, they're in salad dressings, mayonnaise, baked goods, snack foods, and frozen meals. And they're destroying your cells. The problem with these oils is that they're extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids, particularly linoleic acid. When consumed in excess, omega-6 fatty acids promote inflammation by shifting the balance of signaling molecules in your body toward pro-inflammatory pathways. The modern Western diet contains a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids of approximately 20 to 1, when the optimal ratio for human health is closer to 4 to 1 or even 2 to 1. This massive imbalance drives chronic inflammation that damages blood vessels, brain tissue, and joints. But the inflammation isn't the only problem. These oils are also highly unstable. When exposed to heat, light, or oxygen, they oxidize and form compounds called lipid peroxides. When you consume oxidized oils, those lipid peroxides enter your cells and damage mitochondria, impair energy production, and create more oxidative stress. Research published in the Journal of Lipid Research demonstrated that diets high in oxidized vegetable oils accelerated cellular aging markers and increased the rate of age-related diseases in animal models. The mechanism is clear. These oils are essentially delivering oxidative damage directly into your cells every time you eat them. The second food that accelerates aging is processed meats. This includes bacon, sausage, hot dogs, deli meats, and anything that's been cured, smoked, or preserved with nitrates or nitrites. Processed meats are classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the World Health Organization, which puts them in the same category as tobacco and asbestos. But beyond cancer risk, processed meats accelerate aging through several pathways. The first is that they contain high levels of advanced glycation end products, or AGs, which form when proteins are cooked at high temperatures, particularly during smoking or grilling. When you consume AGs, they accumulate in your tissues, cross-link proteins, trigger inflammation, and damage blood vessels. The second pathway is that the nitrates and nitrites used to preserve these meats convert to nitrosamines in your digestive tract. Nitrosamines are potent DNA-damaging compounds that accelerate cellular aging and increase cancer risk. The third pathway is oxidative stress. Processed meats contain heme iron, which promotes the formation of free radicals in your digestive system. These free radicals damage the cells lining your gut and create systemic oxidative stress that affects your entire body. Studies published in the British Medical Journal found that regular consumption of processed meats was associated with shorter telomere length, higher inflammatory markers, and increased mortality from cardiovascular disease and cancer. The dose-dependent relationship showed that every 50-gram serving of processed meat per day, which is roughly equivalent to 2 slices of bacon or 1 hot dog, increased mortality risk by approximately 18%. This isn't a small effect, This is one of the strongest diet-disease relationships we have in nutritional epidemiology. The third food that accelerates aging is fried foods. This includes French fries, fried chicken, donuts, potato chips, and anything cooked in oil at high temperatures. Fried foods accelerate aging for the same reason that refined vegetable oils do, but the damage is even worse because the frying process creates additional toxic compounds. When oils are heated to frying temperatures, which typically range from 350 to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, the chemical structure of the fats changes. Trans fats form even in oils that didn't originally contain them. Acrylamide, a known neurotoxin and probable carcinogen, forms when starchy foods are fried, and advanced glycation end products accumulate in the browned, crispy exterior that people find so appealing. All of these compounds damage your DNA, impair mitochondrial function, and promote inflammation. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition tracked dietary patterns and biological aging markers in over 4,000 adults. Those who consumed fried foods 4 or more times per week had telomeres that were significantly shorter than those who rarely ate fried foods, equivalent to approximately 8 years of additional biological aging. The study controlled for other factors, including smoking, exercise, and overall diet quality, meaning the fried food consumption alone was responsible for the accelerated aging. What's particularly concerning is that fried foods are often consumed outside the home, which makes them harder to avoid and easier to underestimate in terms of frequency. A breakfast sandwich from a fast food restaurant, French fries with lunch, and potato chips as a snack can easily add up to daily fried food exposure without people realizing it. The fourth food that accelerates aging is high fructose corn syrup. This sweetener is ubiquitous in the modern food supply. It's in soda, fruit juice, ketchup, barbecue sauce, bread, yogurt, cereal, and desserts. High fructose corn syrup is particularly damaging because fructose is metabolized almost entirely in the liver, where it triggers a cascade of metabolic dysfunction. When fructose is broken down, it generates uric acid as a byproduct. Elevated uric acid impairs endothelial function, which damages blood vessels and raises blood pressure. It also promotes fat accumulation in the liver, leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But the aging effects go beyond metabolic dysfunction. Fructose accelerates glycation at a rate approximately 7 times faster than glucose. This means that high fructose corn syrup produces advanced glycation end products more rapidly than any other common sugar. And those AGs accumulate in your skin, your arteries, your kidneys, and your brain, driving the aging process forward. Studies published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation demonstrated that high fructose consumption increased oxidative stress, shortened telomeres, and accelerated cellular senescence in both animal and human studies. The effects were dose-dependent, meaning the more fructose consumed, the greater the biological aging. And because high fructose corn syrup is cheaper than regular sugar, food manufacturers have replaced sugar with it in thousands of products, meaning consumption has skyrocketed over the past 40 years without most people being aware of the substitution. The fifth food that accelerates aging is white bread and refined grains. This includes white rice, pasta made from refined flour, crackers, bagels, and most cereals. The problem with refined grains is that they've been stripped of fiber, vitamins, and minerals during processing, leaving behind pure starch that converts rapidly to glucose in your bloodstream. When you eat refined grains, your blood sugar spikes dramatically. This spike triggers a corresponding insulin surge to clear the glucose from your blood. Over time, these repeated spikes and surges lead to insulin resistance, which is one of the primary drivers of metabolic aging. But the blood sugar spikes also cause direct cellular damage. High glucose levels promote glycation, generating advanced glycation end products that damage proteins throughout your body. They also increase oxidative stress by overwhelming the cellular machinery responsible for glucose metabolism. And they trigger inflammation by activating immune pathways that respond to elevated blood sugar as a threat. Research published in the American Journal of Epidemiology found that diets high in refined grains were associated with significantly higher levels of inflammatory markers, greater oxidative stress, and shorter telomeres compared to diets based on whole grains. The difference in biological aging between high refined grain consumers and low refined grain consumers was approximately 5 to 7 years. And what compounds this problem is that refined grains are often marketed as healthy. White bread fortified with vitamins, breakfast cereals made from refined grains but labeled as whole grain because they contain a small percentage of whole grain flour, pasta marketed as enriched. These marketing tactics mislead people into believing they're making healthy choices when in fact they're consuming foods that accelerate aging. The sixth food that accelerates aging is alcohol. And this is where the message gets complicated because the research on alcohol and health is mixed. Small amounts of certain types of alcohol, particularly red wine, have been associated with some health benefits in observational studies. But the vast majority of research shows that regular alcohol consumption, even at moderate levels, accelerates biological aging. Alcohol is metabolized in the liver into acetaldehyde, which is a toxic compound that damages DNA, impairs cellular repair mechanisms, and generates oxidative stress. Alcohol also depletes your body's stores of essential nutrients, including B vitamins, magnesium, and antioxidants that are critical for cellular function and repair. It disrupts sleep architecture, preventing the deep restorative sleep stages where cellular repair and detoxification occur. And it promotes inflammation by damaging the gut lining and allowing bacterial toxins to enter the bloodstream. Studies published in Molecular Psychiatry found that regular alcohol consumption was associated with accelerated telomere shortening and increased biological age. The effects were seen even in people consuming what would be considered moderate amounts, which is typically defined as 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men. The researchers found that every gram of alcohol consumed per day was associated with measurable telomere shortening, and the cumulative effect over years was significant biological aging. The challenge is that alcohol is deeply embedded in social and cultural practices, which makes it one of the hardest aging foods to eliminate or reduce for most people. The seventh food that accelerates aging is artificial sweeteners. These include aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, and asulfame potassium, which are found in diet sodas, sugar-free desserts, protein bars, flavored yogurts, and thousands of processed food products marketed as low-calorie or diet options. For years, artificial sweeteners were promoted as a healthy alternative to sugar because they don't raise blood glucose, but emerging research shows that they accelerate aging through a completely different mechanism. Artificial sweeteners disrupt the gut microbiome, which is the community of trillions of bacteria living in your digestive tract. These bacteria play a critical role in immune function, metabolism, inflammation regulation, and even brain health. When artificial sweeteners kill off beneficial bacteria and promote the growth of harmful bacteria, the balance shifts toward a pro-inflammatory, metabolically dysfunctional state. This condition, called dysbiosis, has been linked to accelerated aging, increased disease risk, and shortened lifespan. Research published in Nature demonstrated that artificial sweetener consumption altered gut bacteria in ways that promoted glucose intolerance, which is a precursor to diabetes. Subsequent studies found that the gut microbiome changes caused by artificial sweeteners also increased systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. The effects were seen with all major artificial sweeteners, suggesting that the problem is not limited to one specific compound, but rather a characteristic of the entire class of sweeteners. Now, when we understand which foods accelerate aging, we automatically understand which foods slow it down. And the pattern is consistent. The foods that protect against aging are whole, minimally processed, and nutrient-dense. They're high in antioxidants that neutralize free radicals. They're rich in anti-inflammatory compounds that suppress chronic inflammation. They contain fiber that stabilizes blood sugar and supports gut health. And they provide the vitamins and minerals needed for cellular repair and mitochondrial function. The Mediterranean diet, which is built around vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, olive oil, and fish, has been shown in multiple studies to slow biological aging, extend telomeres, and reduce mortality from all causes. Research published in the British Medical Journal followed over 10,000 women for more than 10 years and found that those who adhered most closely to a Mediterranean dietary pattern had significantly longer telomeres compared to those with the poorest adherence. The difference in telomere length corresponded to approximately 4 to 5 years of biological aging, meaning the diet alone preserved cellular youth by half a decade. The practical application of this information is straightforward. Replace refined vegetable oils with extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil for cooking. Eliminate processed meats and replace them with fresh, unprocessed sources of protein like chicken, fish, eggs, and legumes. Avoid fried foods entirely, or reserve them for rare occasions rather than regular consumption. Remove high fructose corn syrup from your diet by eliminating soda, sweetened beverages, and heavily processed packaged foods. Replace white bread and refined grains with whole grain alternatives like quinoa, brown rice, oats, and whole grain bread that lists whole grain flour as the first ingredient. Limit alcohol consumption to occasional use rather than daily or regular drinking. And eliminate artificial sweeteners, replacing diet sodas and sugar-free products with water, unsweetened tea, or beverages sweetened with small amounts of natural sugars if needed. Let me bring this back to the emergency department because I want you to see the real-world consequences of accelerated biological aging. I've treated countless patients in their 50s and 60s who are experiencing health crises that typically occur 10 to 15 years later in people who've aged more slowly. A 58-year-old man came in with a massive stroke. His diet history revealed daily consumption of fried foods, processed meats, and soda, sweetened with high fructose corn syrup. His biological markers showed telomere shortening, severe vascular inflammation, and oxidative damage consistent with someone in their mid-70s. The stroke wasn't bad luck. It was the predictable outcome of decades of dietary patterns that accelerated his vascular aging. Another patient, a 62-year-old woman, came in with advanced kidney disease requiring dialysis. She'd been consuming diet soda with artificial sweeteners for 30 years, believing it was a healthy choice because it was sugar-free. Her gut microbiome analysis showed severe dysbiosis and her inflammatory markers were off the charts. The kidney damage wasn't caused by diabetes or high blood pressure. It was caused by chronic inflammation driven by gut dysfunction, which was driven by artificial sweeteners. These aren't isolated cases. These are patterns I see repeatedly, and they all share the same underlying story. Dietary choices made over decades accelerate biological aging and manifest as disease that seems to appear suddenly, but has actually been developing for years. The bigger picture here is that the foods accelerating your aging are not exotic or rare. They're mainstream. They're in every grocery store, every restaurant, and likely in your kitchen right now, but the power to stop the accelerated aging process is entirely in your control. You don't need medication. You don't need expensive interventions. You need awareness and the willingness to change dietary patterns that are stealing years from your life. The science is overwhelming. The 7 foods we've discussed, refined vegetable oils, processed meats, fried foods, high fructose corn syrup, refined grains, alcohol, and artificial sweeteners, accelerate biological aging through telomere shortening, mitochondrial damage, oxidative stress, and chronic inflammation. And eliminating or drastically reducing these foods while replacing them with whole, nutrient-dense alternatives can slow your biological aging, extend your health span, and add functional, independent years to your life. So here's the bottom line, and this is what I really want you to take away from this. Your biological age is not determined solely by your chronological age or your genetics. It's determined by the cumulative effect of daily choices, and diet is the most powerful variable you control. The 7 foods that accelerate aging, refined vegetable oils, processed meats, fried foods, high fructose corn syrup, refined grains, alcohol, and artificial sweeteners, damage your cells at the molecular level and shorten your lifespan. But the good news is that this damage is preventable and in some cases reversible. By eliminating these foods and replacing them with whole anti-inflammatory nutrient-dense alternatives, you can slow your biological aging, protect your telomeres, support your mitochondria, reduce oxidative stress, and suppress chronic inflammation. This is not about perfection. This is about consistent patterns over time. And the earlier you start, the more years you preserve. The diseases I see in the emergency department are not inevitable. They're the result of accelerated biological aging driven by dietary choices, and those choices can be changed. And finally, just to end, please subscribe to the channel if you found this useful to help me reach more people like you.